We're finally doing something cool on the truck. Let's get to it. Today we are doing something exciting. We are going to be lowering the rear of the truck. I've always wanted to see it lowered, and today we are going to begin that. As you saw when we closed out the last video, I went through and sprayed penetrating lube all over all the hardware, so it shouldn't be much of a problem today. I might go back through and do another soak on that. Breaking bolts typically slows a project down, and today it's New Year's Eve. If I need hardware, I'm probably not going to be able to find it anywhere, so just taking that care and maintenance and those steps ahead will save you a lot of time, a lot of headaches, and maybe even a lot of crying while you're building your project. Before we get our hands dirty today, I'm going to go through and check in the parts for this particular part of the build. If you've seen my other videos, you know I'm a huge proponent of checking in your parts the day you get them. That way if you run into any issues, or if there was something that should be in your order that isn't, you know it before you even start. Now, on a project this large, I have many corners of the truck I can be working on, so if I check in parts and realize, okay, I don't have something for this particular thing, then I can move on to another part of the truck. But the day I got these parts, I checked them all in, so I already know where all the parts are for this part of the build, and I know they are correct. So I've talked at you enough, now it's time to get to work. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get all the little delicate stuff out of the way first so I don't damage that. Probably brake lines, wiring. We're gonna be completely redoing the exhaust on the C10. So I'm gonna hack it off behind the cab so that's not gonna get in the way of anything we're doing today. And then we'll start ripping into the bigger stuff. We'll get the leaf springs unbolted, the shocks out of there, and get this thing up on some jack stands and get ripping. Did it again. Filmed a bunch of stuff without the microphone on. That is like the song and dance of this build series. The first thing I want to do is I want to get some preliminary measurements of the height of the frame. The overall goal of this project as far as lowering is to lower the back 5 inches and lower the front 3 inches. I want to just keep track of how much drop we're actually getting. That way I know we're getting a level drop with the parts that I already have. I'm going to take some preliminary measurements, mark them on some masking tape on the frame, and that way we can check it once the truck is dropped. Now that I have all my preliminary measurements, I'm going to work on pulling the wiring and other delicate things out of the frame. I'm going to be doing a lot of grinding, so I don't want to nick any wiring, brake hoses, or brake cables or anything like that. So I'm going to pull those out of the way, remove the shocks. We're not going to be reusing those. I'm going to hack the exhaust off too. I want to keep it mobile as long as possible. That way if I can't get all this stuff removed today, the truck can still be moved and wheeled around. I want to wait till the last possible minute to throw it up on the jack stands. All right, the exhaust is all snipped out. Make sure when you're using your death wheels, you're using a full face shield. There's a reason why they call them death wheels. These things they're just fiber. They can disintegrate and come flying off and come into your face. And if you're wearing safety glasses, it still doesn't protect your cheekbones. And it can even ride underneath your safety glasses and still stab you in the eye. So whenever I'm using one of these bad boys, I'm always wearing a full face shield. Now that we got the exhaust out of the way, I want to go through and pull a couple brake lines to get the brake fluid drained out. I'm doing a full disc brake conversion on this anyways, new brake lines. So I want to remove as much of the brake line from the rear of the truck as I can so that's not in the way and we're not lighting brake fluid on fire. So I'm going to pull one of the lines and get the fluid drained out and we'll move on from there. Here's another beautiful example of how to use the wrong tool for the job. Actually, all joking aside, someone had already stripped all the fittings on the rear brake lines, and I wish I had just taken a sawzall to them from the beginning. Got all the brake lines out of the way. I just flipped them back, so I'm not going to cut into them with a grinder when I do the C-notch and light anything on fire. One was so rusty it broke when I barely touched it, so pretty lucky that didn't happen out on the road when I was driving it. this little squealy one here. I think I'm just going to take off this side so it's not in the way. I want to get a center line for the axle location before I unbolt anything. That way I know exactly where to cut the middle of the C-notch. To find the exact center of the axle, I'm going to use a very rudimentary tool called a plumb bob, for those of you that haven't seen it. And just by touching this string to the frame and then resting the, I don't know if it'll focus, resting the point of this on the highest portion of the axle as it goes over, I'll be able to find the center point and mark its location on the frame where the string touches. So as I'm resting it over the axle tube, I'm letting it drag. And I'll make 2 dots and make a straight line there, and then I'll know the center point of my axle, and then we can start unbolting everything. I want to make sure it has as much travel as it can possibly have. Moving on, there's a couple things that we need to figure out with this. The C-notch kit. The C-notch kit is made for a coil spring truck with trailing arms, of which this truck is not. It has leaf springs. They didn't make that many of these leaf spring trucks from 67 to 72, so there isn't much aftermarket support. Even the axle flip kit I have to move the axle from below this leaf spring to above, that's actually for 73 to 87 C10. And from what I understand, the internet tells me I can just do a little bit of grinding and make that fit and make that work. But with an older project vehicle, this is just what you have to do. You have to adapt to what you have, and it takes a little bit of creativity to make stuff work. But in the end, it'll all be okay, and you'll be a little bit stronger for it. So the one thing we need to do is I'm gonna have to make a template so I know exactly where to cut hunks of metal out of the side of this frame. I want to be as conservative as possible with that. And also, the shock location is different on the leaf spring truck than it is the coil spring truck. So I need to figure out if I need to remove this shock bracket, and if so, where do I mount the new shock once the rear end comes up, and where do I need to place the bracket? So that's just a few things that we need to figure out. I'm going to start by pulling the shocks out and seeing the bottom half of the shock bracket over here. There's actually a bolt in that. It's not just riveted. I'm going to see if that bolt comes out to give us clearance to mock this plate up, and then I'm going to make the template, and we're going to cut this out. Okay, as you can see, the shocks are out of the way. I put the hardware back on the shock setup here and back in the holes down there. If you watch video 2, you know I like to use plastic organizing bins to organize all the hardware I'm taking off. But more than that, I like to keep the hardware where it goes, especially during now where I'm going to be mocking up a lot of stuff. I know it's exactly where it needs to be, and when I go mock up the new shocks, I can just pull the bolts, put them right back in. I don't have to go hunting for them in another part of the shop. Moving on, I'm gonna make the template for the C-notches for both sides, because I want to see if I need to do anything with that shock bracket before I go monkeying with it and taking bolts out or cutting rivets off. So let's get to arts and crafts time and put you in the tripod, and we'll get to it. All right, I got my fancy little templates cut and laid out, marked for side. This tells me where the front is, and there's directions with this kit that tells me where to line the bracket up. So I kind of know where to line the template up, but I did a rough marking there, and then did a rough marking on the inside of the frame. If you can see where my finger is, there and there. Again, the kit is not for this exact configuration of springs. It's not that important to have the hole cut perfectly, but I still want to have a nice looking hole when I'm done, just for aesthetics and just how I am. I want it to look nice no matter who's looking at it. You know, someone might take this thing apart 30 years from now, and I still want it to look good then. So I'm going to take those measurements, and then we're going to hack the C-notches. All right, it's that point in the internet TV show where we enter the point of no return. We're going to hack a chunk out of each side of the frame to make room for the C-notch. Now, you can use a plasma cutter, sawzall, whatever you want. My weapon of choice is the death wheel. It's cheap, and I have one. But make sure whatever tool you're using, always wear your PPE. There's only one you, and you don't want to remove parts of you, and therefore not be able to do fun projects like this, or hold your children or see your children. So make sure you're wearing all the appropriate gear when you're cutting and hacking and grinding. Watch where your sparks are going. If you still have glass in your vehicle, if you still have the glass in your vehicle, make sure you remove it or cover it up. This truck, we're going to be replacing most of the glass all the way around, so I'm not too concerned about it, and I'm aiming my sparks away from it anyway. So enough yapping at you. Let's take some material off this truck. On cuts like this, I like to start small and go big. I know these are going to be a little tight to begin with. I'll have to do some fitting. It's easier to remove material than it is to replace material. I'm going to start with a modest cut, and then we'll work our way out until the C-notch bracket fits in there perfectly. An important thing to note here when you are removing sections of the frame, you don't want to have any weight hanging from the frame or anything pushing up on it. That can cause the frame to buckle or bend or just distort in ways that you don't want it to. So what you can't see here is I have the frame on jack stands and I have a jack supporting the rear axle, so there's relatively neutral weight right there. That way when I take the big chunks out of the frame won't buckle or bend. This is exactly why you wear a full face shield with a death wheel. See all those bits of fiber? I have no clue where they are in the shop, but they are not in my face because I'm wearing this bad boy. So make sure you're wearing your full face shield with these things. Yeah, I gotta get it set up. Trigger. Go. Squeeze. There you go. Go.
Wow, that is yuck.
That is a yucky bowl. Alright. And whoa. Go ahead. Oh, you want them to see what you're doing? You're using the four-wheeler jack to jack up the sawhorse? Alright, I got my little helper in the shop now, so I'm going to keep the grinding to a minimum, but that doesn't mean I have to stop what I'm doing. I had my little buddy help me take the tires off so we have more clearance when we're grinding out the, wherever it is, the C-notch a little bit more. And I got to remove both leaf springs to put the axle flip kit in anyway, so I think we're going to work on that. It's pretty low noise. My little fixer here can help me with a lot of that. I try to get my kids in the shop with me as much as I possibly can. It does slow things down, but we have a damn good time.
Why do you talk on there?
Why do I talk on here?
Yeah.
Because they're so other people through the computer screen can see it. I see you in there. We gotta find the right size sockets. Now the leaf springs are out of the way, and I've done a rough fit up on the passenger side C-notch, and now I'm getting ready to cut the driver's side C-notch. It's hard to tell in a 20-minute video how much finesse and precision went into fitting these C-notches in the holes in the frame, but I wanted all the fit and finish work to look perfect on these. A flap wheel on a grinder made it easy to slowly open the hole so that the C-notch bracket fit perfectly. After the 57th fit up, it was ready to be clamped in place to mark the holes to be drilled. Before scuffing the C-notch brackets to shoot some paint on them, I wiped them down with lacquer thinner to remove all the oils from manufacturing. It was finally time to bolt the brackets in for good and never look back.
I got this side bolted in. I missed drilling a bolt hole, so I'll have to drill that and probably take this bracket back off. But no big deal. And then this side over here. I've got a few of the pilot holes drilled. I still have to clean up the C-notch and paint this bracket. Where are you? Paint the bracket, paint this. But one thing I have to deal with over here is, if I can get that in the shot. Where are you? I have two rivets that are right where I need to drill through that plate. So I'm going to have to knock the heads off of those rivets and punch those out with an air hammer the next time I'm in the shop. That's what we're going to work on next. I want to get these solid bolted in, and I'll work on putting the flip kit in. Another thing I forgot to do with the flip kit, you'll notice a trend here. I'm forgetting all procedure here. I got to put the leaf springs back in the original way with the axle underneath them and clamp the leaf spring down, because I want to get a front to back measurement and kind of get an idea of where that axle sits. And we're probably gonna have to monkey with the pinion angle a little bit once that kit's put in. Again, like I said, the kit's not made specifically for this truck, which isn't a big deal. That's how we roll around here. We make stuff work and make it look good. I don't know if I had the microphone on for the measuring monologue. One thing I forgot to do before I took this apart was to take a preliminary measurement of the axle front to rear position and side to side. That way when the flip kit goes in, I know it's sitting exactly where it needs to sit. I've got the peanut gallery here with me today. So I'm going to take some front to rear measurements and then drop the axle back out, and we'll get everything flipped. I've got the flip kit in here on both sides. I've got the leaf spring bolts in, but not tight. I've got the bolts, or the nuts started on this. Everything looks good. It looks like it's going to go together nicely. I'm going to hammer this home and get it close to snug, and then we'll get it back down on its tires. I'm pretty pumped. Got all the bolts snugged up, got the tires on it. You might even be able to see how much lower it's sitting just on that camera angle. This thing sits crazy low now. I wasn't expecting this. I figured 5 inches of drop. Yeah, I know what that looks like, but it's so low that my jack is stuck under there. I gotta jack it up, put jack stands on it, and slide some blocks of wood out and get the jack under there. This is freaking awesome. The axle looks pretty good lined up in the C-notches. As I said, this flip kit isn't for this truck. This is for a 73 to 87. I wasn't sure how much difference there would be. I found one guy on the internet that would actually answer questions about it that has done it before, and he said he just trimmed the saddles that the axles sit in to fit up in the spring perch, and that's exactly what I did. And it looks pretty good. I'm going to put the bump stops in, and once I finally get my jack unstuck from out from underneath here, I'm going to see how it cycles. I'm going to jump up and down on it. I need to look at the shocks. For some reason, they sent me 6 shocks. The company that I bought all the suspension stuff through, they sent me 6 shocks. I don't know why. 4 are identical, and 1 is different, and I don't think any of them are going to fit the back, so we'll have to see what that's about. The angle's not too bad on this for dampening with the shock. That's not a terrible angle. I was expecting it to be more upright, which isn't good. You want to kind of lay them out more to get more of the jounce and dampening out of it. Dude, this freaking rules. Oh my gosh. It's got like the Carolina lean to it right now. I'll have to get a lower camera. We'll get lower. Yeah, the front's way up in the air now, and the back is squatting low, just like it should be. I am genuinely concerned that this thing will not drive out of my shop very well. I have a big dip right out of the shop, and then another big dip to get up out of here. I'm gonna end up having to build a bridge by the time we get done with this. But I am pretty freaking excited right now. This thing looks awesome. I got the bump stops. I put the bump stops in, and I jumped up and down on the back of the frame without the shocks in, and bottomed it out to the bump stops. Zero clearance issues. Now, if you're doing something like this at home, no matter whether it's, even if it's not a C10 like this, whatever you're doing, if you're cycling suspension, you want to check other things in the truck for clearance just besides the rear axle. There are other things. I mean, even the way the leaf springs lay out, drive shaft clearance. I was concerned about that cross member. It's really good right there. I'm not gonna have a problem with that. There's quite a bit of clearance at bottom out, so we're G2G on that. The last thing I'm gonna do to finish this video off, I want to take the front wheels. I want to take the front tires off and lower that 3 inches to get a good idea of how this thing's gonna lay out and if it's gonna level out. And if it looks like it's kind of sitting high in the front, I might get a lower spring. Right now, it's going to be about 3.5 inches lower, which I'm hoping will level this out nicely. Oh man, this is the thing that keeps you motivated in a project, when you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I haven't even begun on this thing yet, but it's still nice to see where it's going to sit once it's on its new suspension. The rear is all mocked up. It looks good. Man, this thing looks damn cool. I am going to leave you right there. This is where we're going to cap the video off. Again, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the build series. We're going to be doing a ton of cool stuff to this truck. This is just the beginning. Also, hit the like button. Hit me up in the comments down below. I love to hear from you guys, mainly because I don't know everything. I've been so impressed by the good feedback from people that have added a ton of value, a ton of knowledge to this channel, mainly for other people, and I've learned a lot of stuff too. If you see me doing something the hard way, please tell me. I don't like to do stuff the hard way. I like to do stuff the easy way, so your feedback is important. Make sure you go over to Instagram and follow me between videos at You Break It, You Fix It. As always, I'm Jim Murphy. This is You Break It, You Fix It, and I'll see you in another video. Time to blow this thing back apart and get the axle flipped and test fit.
Testy.
Testy? I think he knows what testy means.
Testy.
Yeah, your mom's gonna love that. Dude, this freaking rules. Oh my gosh.